Hi, I'm Gargi Kothari. I'm a wine sommelier on the professional circuit.
Welcome, Gargi, on our show, The Professional Circuit. As you know, the show is all about, we talk to experts from niche professions. We talk to them about what their profession is all about and what are the skill set needed, what are the qualifications needed, and also the expertise required. I'll begin with the first question. And it'll be more like, say, if I met you at a party and asked what you do, how would you explain being a sommelier?
So, of course, when you meet people at various gatherings or social occasions or something, and then they ask me, what do I do? So, I would say that I'm a wine sommelier, and then they go like, wow. And of course, it is wow, I love my profession. But in a way to explain to them, like I tell them that I basically curate wine tastings and talk to people about wine, get them to taste wine, get them to get acquainted with wine, develop an interest in wine, or basically the whole idea is to curate experiences around wine where people can learn about wine and explore wine and just have fun at it while doing that. But there are other things also that a sommelier does. Like, I work in a slightly different format or space, but a sommelier is also somebody like who works on the floor in a restaurant, and they manage the entire wine aspect of the restaurant. So right from like designing the wine list to working on the pricing and to doing the food pairings, and then when guests come to the restaurant, suggesting wines to them and getting them to taste the wines and talk about the wines a little bit, and then serve the wine as well. So all these different aspects would consist of what a sommelier does.
Can you walk me through how you read a wine, like step by step, and what are you looking at every stage?
The process of tasting wine is in a way quite technical. And then there are these tasting formats that we as sommeliers follow. That is what we study when we are studying wine as professionals. So, to just explain it briefly, it is called the 5S of wine tasting, which basically involves using all your senses to taste wine. So the first S stands for C, which is to look at the wine, because the color of the wine can tell you a lot of things about it in the beginning itself. So if a red wine is deep and dark in color, it means that it's a young red wine, because red wines lose color as they age. So looking at the hue of the color, the intensity or the concentration of the color can tell me an approximate age of the wine. And it's the opposite when it comes to white wines. So white wines are lighter in color when they are younger, and they gain color as they age. So that's the first thing that you want to see. You're also trying to evaluate if there are any faults in the wine, because if the wine appears hazy, then it's possible that it has gotten heat damaged, or there is some kind of oxygen, too much of oxygen exposure to the wine. So usually a wine has to be clear and bright. So these are the two aspects mainly that we look for. And then the next step is to swirl the wine. So wine has a lot of different volatile compounds, like ethers and esters and sulfur compounds that are responsible for the aromas that you get in the wine. So it is said that 70% of your palate are your olfactory senses. So what you smell is what you taste. So therefore, smelling the wine is as important as tasting the wine as well. So first you want to swirl the glass a little bit, like maybe 2 3 4 5 swirls, and then you nose the wine. So you want to take in the aroma, so you're smelling the wine. And this you can do like multiple times before you actually taste the wine, because these volatile compounds will start expressing themselves as the wine aerates during the swirling process. So therefore the second S is to swirl, and the third S is to smell the wine. And after that you sip the wine, and the last step is to either spit the wine. In professional tastings we don't like drink the wine as such, so we are spitting the wine. But alternatively, when you are just drinking wine, at that time the last S stands for savor basically. And then when you are actually smelling the wine and sipping the wine, you are evaluating it on various aspects. So the smell part of it, you're seeing what are the kind of aromas that you're getting in the wine. So those aromas range from very delicate floral notes to very powerful notes like, for example, wood or oak, or sweet spices that come into red wine from oak aging. Then you're trying to look at all the different kind of fruit aromas that you are getting. So in red wines you mostly have like red fruit and black fruit aromas, and then you can have a lot of different aromas of spices, and then as the wine has aged, for example, it develops a lot of different tertiary aromas as well. So it can have aromas of like mushrooms, forest floor, tobacco, leather, mocha, chocolate, espresso. Like it can have all the olives, for example, it can have all these kind of complex layered aromas. And then for, if I talk about white wines, then that is going to be like more citrus forward. So you have a lot of citrus fruits, stone fruits, or even tropical fruit notes in white wines. You can also have like the earthy aromas like minerality, or you can have the slightly vanilla or woody notes as well in certain white wines that can age in oak. You can have floral aromas also in white wines. And then if the white wine has aged for a longer time, it can develop nose of like say caramel or nutty aromas, or certain kind of like buttery notes can also come in those white wines that I've seen oak aging. So it's like all these range of aromas that you evaluate, which can tell you a lot about the wine. For example, if it has any age on it, if it has seen any oak aging, it can even tell you a lot about the what kind of possible grape varietal it could be if you don't know the grape varietal upfront, because all the different grape varietals have their signature notes, which what we call like the typicity of that wine. So if a Sauvignon Blanc has some typical characteristics versus a Chardonnay versus a Riesling, for example, they have their very typical characteristics that through these aromas we can assess. And then when it comes to the palate, similar kind of notes are found even on the palate, like what we spoke about on the nose. But you're also trying to evaluate the palate on various other parameters, like for example, what is the acidity level in the wine. So, if your mouth waters a lot, then the wine has a lot of acidity. If it's lower on the acidity, like feels softer and more rounder on your palate. Then you are also evaluating it for like tannins, which is the mouth drying or the mouth coating effect that you have when you drink red wine. So you're trying to assess the level of tannins also. Then that tells you about what is the structure of the wine like. So these are what is the body of the wine, so whether it's light, medium, or full bodied. So these are the kind of things that you're trying to assess on the palate as well. And also whether what you got on the nose, you're getting that on the palate or not. Because a lot of times, these are like some cheap tricks that commercial or industrialized wines might use, where they make the wine smell very good, but it doesn't have the same kind of flavor on the palate. So like you have to see that what you're getting on the nose, are you getting that same kind of aroma characteristics or that intensity on the palate or not, because that can then tell you about the quality of the wine. So the last step is actually to judge the aging potential of the wine, and then to judge the quality of the wine, and like what is the final conclusion basically. So like these are the kind of things that we try to assess when we are talking about a wine, like, and this is done in various depths and degrees depending on somebody's tasting skills.
So how does like the regions affect the flavors of the wine? How does the flavor varies, from region to region, and if it's the climate that affects, or it's the the material, or the soil, the material that affects the flavors of the wine, the brands also in specific.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so this is what you just said, like this refers to the terroir of a particular region. And terroir is a French word that is like a umbrella term for various factors that affect a grape during the grape growing process, and also when you are making the wine, like what are the different kind of wine making traditions and techniques that are being followed. So right from the kind of soil the grapes are grown on, to the amount of sunshine the region receives, the amount of rainfall it receives, also like what is the elevation of the vineyards, what is the aspect of the slope, where on the slope the vineyard is located. All these different factors are going to have a direct impact on the quality of the grapes, and therefore the quality of the wine, because you can make good quality wine only from good quality of grapes. Minimum human intervention is required in order to make good wine. So you also have something known as low intervention wines, where there hardly any intervention, so you get like wine in its most natural form. So where the wine is made is not in the winery but in the vineyard. They say that 70% of the wine is made in the vineyard. So what you do in the vineyard is going to have a direct impact on the quality of wine that you're going to produce. So the same grape can have certain different kinds of characteristics depending on what kind of soil the grapes are grown on, what kind of climatic conditions do you see. So for example, if you take a very globally present grape, Chardonnay, you could have a cool climate Chardonnay versus a warm climate Chardonnay, and the cool climate one is going to have more citrus fruit notes, whereas the warm climate one is going to have more tropical fruit notes, because of the climate that's affecting the flavors that are developing in the grapes. Versus like if the grapes are being grown on say gravelly soils versus limestone soils, or versus say clay based soils, that is also going to have a different kind of a structure or tannins or acidity in the wine. So therefore certain kind of soils are more suited for certain kinds of grape varietals. So white wines do really well on like limestone soils, for example, and red wines, do well on a mix of limestone and clay and gravel, for example. Or if you take Riesling, from Germany, those are grown on slate-based soils. So it's like it totally varies from region to region, and therefore the grape varietals also that are dominant in that region vary, because those grape varietals are more suited to those climatic conditions and soil conditions. So the terroir is something that becomes very important when it comes to wine, and good quality wines are always going to be more terroir driven. That means they express the place where they come from.
Is a sommelier's role limited to wine tasting and recommending, or does it also extend to other alcoholic beverage as well?
So, in a restaurant setting, for example, it would involve sommeliers maybe recommending certain other kinds of alcoholic beverages to their guests, depending on their preference. So it could range even from spirits to sake, for example. It can even have beer, on the list as well. So it really depends on even the personal interest and knowledge level of the sommelier, that what are the different aspects besides, wine that they can handle. And a lot of sommeliers who work in restaurant setups, they also acquire other professional qualifications, that gives them knowledge about all of these other alcoholic beverages. So right from spirits, sake to beer, so you have professional certifications in these categories as well. So a sommelier could study this as well if they feel that that is going to add to the skill set. So no, it's not necessary that so a sommelier's job is only restricted to wine. They could be recommending other things, to the guests as well. Whereas, like if I talk about myself over here, then I have only studied wine, and I have my very keen interest only in that subject. So then because of that, I work only with wine when it comes to my events and curating events for like brands or private clients or corporate clients or whatever. Then I just focus only on the wine aspect of the in terms of the beverage aspect of the experience, besides working on the food pairings.
How do you approach pairing wine with food? Is it more rule based or does instinct play a bigger role over time?
For me personally, wine and food pairing is a combination of the guidelines and the instinct. So, when we are studying about wine and food pairings, we are taught about certain guidelines, right? That what goes with what essentially. But then there's always room for experimentation, and there's always going to be room for subjectivity, because wine and food pairing, while it can be rooted in certain guidelines, but everybody's palate is different, right? So it's very subjective. So there is a food pairing that I might enjoy that you might not, and what you might enjoy I might not. And what I do personally is that I like to look at that how intense the wine is and how intense the food is, because what we are trying to do is that we are trying to match the intensity of the two. So something more delicate will go with something more nuanced, for example, or whereas a more robust wine will go with a more flavorful food, because the idea is that the wine and food should not overpower each other, because if it overpowers each other, then you're not going to enjoy the whole experience. So therefore wine and food have to complement each other in a way that they are not overpowering each other. And that's where the intensity bit comes in, where, say for example, if I were to pair something with a white wine, then I'm going to like have, say, a fresh soft style of cheese, or I might have a salad, or I might have something that's delicately flavored, versus if I were to have something with red wine, then I'm going to have something a bit more intense. So while I'm not going to stick to the rule of saying white wine with white meat and red wine with red meat, I might not stick to that rule. But if I were to have, say, white meat or fish with white wine, or if I want to have it with red wine, then it depends on the intensity of the preparation. So if I'm having an Indian preparation, I might have it with like a light fruity red wine, because that is going to balance each other out, like the flavors or the intensity of the food. So it all really depends on what are the kind of flavors that you enjoy, and what is exactly happening on your palate personally. But I would just keep in mind that thumb rule of the intensity of the wine and the intensity of the food.
How did you train your palate, and is memory an important part in recognizing the flavors and aromas?
First, it starts with educating yourself about wine itself. So the study involves not just tasting wine, but it's also like very theory based. So we learn about the different grape varietals, for example, that are there. You learn about each of the characteristics of these grapes. You learn about how these characteristics change from one terroir to another. And then you also learn about the regions where these grapes are grown and these wines are coming from. So you learn a lot about the geography of the place, you learn about the climatic conditions, soil conditions, all of that. So first you learn the theory, and then simultaneously you taste the wines from those places, right? So for example, if I were, say, an old world Sauvignon Blanc, so I'm going to like probably taste a Sauvignon Blanc from somewhere in France. Or if I'm talking about a new world Sauvignon Blanc, I will do a side by side tasting, say, of a Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand. And then I'm going to like kind of understand that the same grape coming from two different places, how is it differing? So this is what I'm going to study in, when I'm training myself. Or a lot of study about wine involves a lot of self study as well. It's not just about what you studied in your course and that's about it. Like every time you try to learn something about wine, you learn something new. So that has to go on. And then in terms of training your palate, like you're actually correlating the theoretical information that you have gained with practical tasting. For that, we go to various professional tastings, we go to trade events, we go to wine expos, where you can actually go and taste a lot of different wines under the same roof. You also travel to wine regions, where you're going to go and taste these different wines. You're going to meet the producers. You're going to learn about wine, in the place where it's made, so the best kind of learning happens at the source, where you're actually going and meeting the people who are making this wine. So like this is a whole ecosystem of learning, that you have to continue doing for the rest of your life as a wine professional. And to answer your next question, which was about like how does memory impact your understanding of wine. So basically aromas and flavors are stored in our brain as memory. To just give you an example, if you got a whiff of something that has a certain memory attached to it from the past, that aroma is going to activate that memory in your brain. So it's the same way that the more you taste wine, the more neural pathways are created in your brain when it comes to storing these aromas and flavors. And then when you keep going back to it, these neural pathways get stronger and stronger, and therefore that's how you get better in tasting wine. That's how you start recognizing more flavors and more aromas, and you start correlating that back to something that you have experienced before. So that's how you can train your palate better as well. So memory does have a huge role to play in terms of developing your tasting skills.
What are the core responsibilities of a sommelier besides, serving, understanding wine?
Well, if I were to talk about like what exactly does my work entail, then it's because I don't work on the floor on in a restaurant setup. Uh, my work functions a bit differently, where I am basically curating a lot of wine based experiences for my clients, or I do my own events as well. So I have smaller like 15-20 people events also, and then going up to like wine festivals that can have anywhere between like 100 to 400 people as well. So in these different aspects, what I do is basically on a day-to-day basis is of course a lot of planning, a lot of logistics, a lot of operational based things in order to put these events together. So right from conceptualizing an event in terms of what kind of theme do I want to put forth this time, and therefore what are the kind of wines that are going to be suitable for this theme, what is the kind of experience that we are curating, right from what is the venue we are looking at, what are the kind of food that we're looking to serve at the event. So all these things are come under the curation aspect. And then at the event it involves talking about each of these wines, taking the guests through a guided tasting of each of the wines. So earlier when we spoke about the 5S of tasting, we go through that process, talk about the wine, talk about the terroir of the place where it comes from, talk about the grape varietal, talk about the producer, and then kind of give them an insight into what is the style of this wine, and then what kind of food we can pair it with, and then answering their questions. So this is what my job entails, when it comes to curating events. But when I also do a lot of like corporate events or private events, then it's also about understanding what the client is looking for and then customizing the experience for them. And then the content also varies as per the audience. So like what is the exposure of the wine to the audience? What is the exposure of the wine for the audience? Like, what is it that they already know of, and what is it that they are looking to understand from me? And then the other thing, which is, when I'm curating like wine festivals, then we are, looking at like every single thing. Like, if it's a 400 people wine festival, then the whole process of doing it is also very different, right? Like how to get 400 people there, what are the things that we want to talk about when it comes to promoting those events, how many different wines do I need to showcase at those events if I'm going to have 400 people at the event, what are the brands that I'm talking to, what are the brands I want to showcase at my event. So it's like really planning every single aspect of the experience. So like my job mainly involves a lot of that, and then looking into the details of each and everything. So it's like very detail oriented as well.
So, what are the different career paths or workplace available for a sommelier in
So
India?
the traditionally sommeliers are somebody who work on the restaurant floor, right? Like we spoke about earlier, that they work in the restaurant setup, and they're looking at, like, right from designing the wine list to doing the pricing, taking the stock checks, and training other team members also on wine, presenting wine to the guests, talking about it, food pairing, all of that. So that is the most traditional route that a sommelier can take. But sommeliers can also be, for example, what I do, like, wine event curators or consultants for brands. That is also something that I do, consult brands on promoting their brands, to the audiences, or helping brands in Europe find an importer over here in India. Importers also employ sommeliers, to promote their wines, and also to educate the trade on their wines. So sommeliers can also be trainers, educators, so all these different kind of aspects also you can, work in the wine. You can also work in marketing, for example, say a B2C marketing or a B2B marketing. You can do that as well, where you are in the marketing department of an importer, or an Indian winery, for example.
What are some common misconceptions about sommeliers?
That we drink wine all day. That is probably the most common misconception that people have. But no, it's not like that. Of course, we would love to more than drink. I'm happy to taste wine all day. If you tell me that the only thing as a sommelier you have to do is visit wine regions, visit wineries, taste wine, and learn about those wines, and meet with the producers, and frolic in the vineyards, and like, just go out there and expand your wine knowledge, like, I'm happy to do that all day, every day. But well, we live in reality, and therefore we have to, kind of do various things for that to happen. Say, even for 15 days in a year, for example, 80% of my day is involved in answering messages, or writing emails, or looking at spreadsheets and things like that. So I think that, that is, I would say, the number one common misconception, that we are like just swimming in wine the whole day. It's not like that.
Can you share some lesser known but crucial aspects of this profession that outsiders rarely know or understand?
I think the first thing I would say is that people don't know that there are professional studies when it comes to wine, and that for you to qualify as a sommelier or as a wine professional, so to speak, you need to get these professional qualifications. And while it might not be compulsory to get those qualifications, but these professional studies are going to really become the foundation on which you build your career. So people don't know that there are these professional qualifications that you can acquire, right? So globally there are two institutes that are very well known when it comes to professional qualifications for wine. So you have WSET, which is Wine and Spirit Education Trust, which is the institute under which I have gained my qualifications. So in India you have till level 3, and these professional studies are open to everybody. You don't need to know anything about wine in order to study these qualifications. So for example, when I got into it back in 2012, when I started studying about wine, at that time I just went in blind for my level 1, and I didn't even know at that time that, for example, Chardonnay is a white wine and Cabernet Sauvignon is a red wine. Like, I didn't even know that. I was not even a wine drinker per se, so I just went into it blind, and I found it so interesting that I decided to study it further. So then I did my level 2, and then I started working with an importer, and while working with the importer I did my level 3. So, and then there is a diploma in this as well, which is the level 4, which is like 2 years part-time course, so it's like 3 trimesters a year, and that is not even available in India. So you either have to go to Hong Kong or London or somewhere to, to acquire your level 4. And then you have something known as Master of Wine, where there are like less than 500 people in this world who have acquired the title of a Master of Wine. So you can put the initials or letters MW after your name. It's like equivalent to putting doctor before your name. So, you become XYZ MW. So like these are like really important professional qualifications that will help you develop your skills, because the syllabus is the same. It all comes from the institute in London, and the syllabus is exactly the same all around the world. So this is something that is very, I would say, not very known when it comes to the field of wine.
Or what can one expect from these tests? Like, what will these tests be like? What they learn, and the levels which you've already mentioned.
And just like WSET, you also have another institute which is called Court of Master Sommeliers, and that is also professional studies in wine, and that is more oriented towards people who want to work on the floor in restaurants, because in CMS you also have a whole practical exam and learning as well, which involves opening a bottle of wine, serving it, and all of that. So that is usually done by a lot of people who work in F&B or want to work on the floor, whereas WSET is more theory oriented, essentially. So in this case you have these two main institutes, and the kind of things that you will learn about wine would be similar in terms of like the syllabus or the kind of topics that they are going to touch upon. So you will have everything right from learning about different grape varietals, then learning about how wine is made or how grapes are grown, and learning about glassware, service, food pairing, storing wine, all of these things. And most importantly, you will learn about each and every major wine region in the world. So you deep dive into those regions as well. So for example, like if I were to say, like if I'm studying about France, then I'm going to study about Champagne, Burgundy, Bordeaux, Rhone, like all these kinds of regions and many more. I'm going to study about each of these regions. I'm going to study about the sub-regions in these regions. I'm going to study about the geography, climate, soil, the kind of grapes that are grown, how wine is made over there, every single detail about these regions I'm going to study. And depending on the level, the detail is different. You'll also study things like quality classification standards, and these will be supplemented by practical tastings. So if I'm learning about a particular region, I will taste wines from those regions for me to be able to correlate the theory and the practical. So it's like I'm learning about all these different aspects, and then you have exams for each and every level. So you have like MCQ based answering, and you also have like long format answers as well. And then from in WSET, I know that from level 3 you have practical tastings also. So you are given a couple of wines to be tasted, and you have to evaluate those wines after tasting them. You don't know what those wines are. It's called a blind tasting. You're just given one white and one red, and then you have to evaluate it. And then the entire evaluation is broken down into various aspects and points for those aspects.
And also, if you could give me a little brief idea about how much these courses would cost.
Level 1, I think, would cost anywhere around 15,000 rupees. Maybe even lesser, but between that 10 to 15,000, because the price varies from institute to institute, because you have the license course providers in India. So WSET gives their license to these course providers, and then people have their different price ranges as well. And level 2 would be around anywhere between 40 to 50,000. Level 2 is for 4 days, and you get the entire study material and everything. And during those 4 days, you go through the study material. There is a WSET certified educator who conducts the course basically, and then you get to do the tastings in that as well. So in level 1, you taste around 15-20 wines, and in level 2, you will taste around 40 to 50 wines over a period of those 4 days. And then level 3 will cost you, I think, anywhere between 1 lakh to 1,20,000, and that is for 6 days, and you will taste around 70 to 80 wines during those during that time. And then you have the examination after that. So usually for level 3, by then you are already, usually level 3 is done by people who are like working in the wine space itself. So then they are constantly learning about wine also. So usually the exams for that happen pretty quickly, like sometimes the next day or the next week after the course is over. And for level 1 and 2, they normally give about 15-20 days, sometimes even a month before you have to give your exam.
And the master's, the 2-year diploma.
Actually, I don't know how much that costs, but that would be like going into lakhs of rupees. I don't know, because you will spend a lot of money in going to, say, a London, staying there. And because what happens is that when you have the course, you have 4-5 days of the classroom time, and then at the end of it, you will be giving the exam of the previous module. So every time you have to go 6 times. So suppose I'm doing like module 1 right now, then that time I probably won't have an exam, but module 2, when you go, you will give the exam for module 1, like that. So then it's like you're going there again and again, and lot of times people have to retake the modules as well. It's not necessary that you will clear it in the first go. And usually theory is harder than the practical blind tasting, because theory you have to literally remember everything, right? Like it's all information. It's not like a formula that you remember and you apply it.
Can you share a core memory of yours in this profession that probably could be related to recommendation, or probably if you were at a vineyard, something you came across to, or something that you learned that has now become a favorite memory of yours as a sommelier?
One of the things that I can think of is, back in 2018 when I was visiting the very famous Mosel wine region in Germany, which is, well known for its Riesling wines, and Riesling is one of my favorite grapes. I tried this wine that at that time was 42 years old, and it was older than me as well. So the wine, was from the 1975 vintage, and it was just absolutely, stunning. It was a sweet style of Riesling, and that is definitely a core memory, from my visits. Another recent, thing that happened was, we were doing a private client event, and that involved opening a bottle of Chateau Haut-Brion 2009 in the format of Imperial, which is a 6-liter bottle of wine. So I think, things like that, like which are like these wow moments. Last year, I also visited one of the most revered wine regions in the world, which is Burgundy in France. And, visiting the vineyard is called Romani Conti, which is literally the place where the world's most expensive red wines come from.
What are some of the biggest challenges in this profession that you have faced, or is probably very common challenges?
So I would say, one of the common challenges that we face, especially as wine event curators, is to get people to the event. So that is like one of the things, that is our major area of focus, that how do we promote these events, what are the platforms that we should use, and how should we get people to come and experience wine. Not everybody is a wine drinker. The culture of wine is very new in India, it's very nascent. So because of that, what happens is that not that many people want to even experience wine, because they are not wine drinkers. They automatically are not coming in for wine tastings, and also people have this kind of misconception as well, that wine is, like I was saying earlier, for the elite, or it's only for people who know about wine. But actually the idea of coming to the tasting is that you are curious about wine and you're just coming there to explore and learn about it. Because people have never experienced those things, then they don't know the value of it. Like what monetary value should they put on it? So that is also something that we struggle with, to kind of get the money that we are asking for. What we think that that our services or our knowledge or our experience as an event curator, and what are the things and what are the aspects that I can bring to the table to enhance your experience, of wine. People don't have that information, or people don't have that experience to say that, hey, this was worth it, and therefore I am willing to pay that price.
So are Indian consumers becoming more experimental and open in terms of trying new wine? Are there any sort of changes that you've observed over the years in your career?
Definitely, huge changes, since I started out. In just the last 5 years, I have again observed a lot of changes. So when I started 10 years ago in 2016, people used to ask me that I don't know anything about wine. Is it okay for me to come to a tasting? Versus 5 years ago, where it was like, hey, I'm curious about wine, I drink wine, I would love to come to a tasting. And now I have people tell me that, oh, I drink a lot of wine, I love wine, but I don't know anything about it, so I want to come to your tasting. So it's like people are drinking more and more wine, but they were not as curious before as they are now. So the curiosity has also gone up, the exposure has gone up, the amount of wine that people want to spend on a bottle has also gone up.
So, what does the future of this profession look like according to you, especially with changing global trends and demands in this profession?
I think this profession has a lot of potential to grow, in India only. If in the Indian context, if I'm saying, then because the wine market is growing, there is more interest for wine, there is more curiosity, there is more thirst for knowledge, there is more people wanting to drink wine. I think that wine has, a pretty bright future as a profession. There is a lot of potential even for Indian sommeliers to work in like hospitality hotspots around the world. I have a lot of friends, who work in Maldives, who work in Seychelles, who work on these really fancy cruise liners as sommeliers. So if that is something that's appealing for people, where you are like living in an exotic location and like really working with wine, something that you're passionate about, I think that also has a lot of potential. And the world is waking up to India, in terms of wine professionals from India, and also looking at wine as an important market for India. Important market for global wines to be sold in India. So like, because the market is so huge and there is so much of potential, it's just about like getting the wine to the right audiences. So I feel like from all different perspectives, the industry is only slated to grow. In fact, India and EU have already signed the trade deal, which they were calling the mother of all trade deals. In that, eventually, in a few years, the duties on European wines is going to come down, to 20% for premium wines and 30% for like mid-premium wines. So while it will not impact the value for money wines, but the premium wines are going to get significantly cheaper eventually. Like in the beginning, the tax percentage might still, the import duties might still be higher, but eventually it will go down to that. And this is slated to get into effect from 2027. There are a lot of Indian wine professionals who are women, who are like really doing some very good work, and can become really good role models for women wanting to get into the industry. Because I feel like this kind of a profession also requires a lot of soft skills, which I feel come more naturally to women. And also scientifically, it is said that women are better tasters because they have sharper noses and sharper palates. So because of that, I feel like there is a lot of impetus for women to really kind of get into this field. People should kind of do away with their misconceptions when it comes to wine as an alcoholic beverage, because alcohol has a lot of taboo in India, right? It is still considered to be something bad. But I would say like wine is very different in that regard, because wine is not just alcohol. Wine is not just about the liquid in the glass, but wine is about history, it's about culture, it's about geography, it's about people. It's about like really, learning about the culture and the history of wine, which makes it so fascinating. It's not just those technical aspects, about wine, but really the story of wine, which makes it so different than other alcoholic beverage. Therefore, like wine should be looked at something that is more culture driven than more alcohol driven, and I feel like this kind of change in perception about it as well is going to bring about a lot of difference into more and more women, coming into the field. Wine importers and wineries are always looking for good, knowledgeable, and passionate people to come and work with them. And I feel like if you have that, then you really have the edge above a lot of people.
So, what initially drew your interest in this profession to become a sommelier?
Honestly, it was, just by chance. I have a background in, uh, I've done my communication management, like in terms of my education. And then after that, I was in consumer research. And after that, I was in advertising. These are the only, two non wine jobs that I have held. For literally a very short period of time, just 1.5 years in each. And by those 3 years, I knew that, this 9 to 5 is like not really my scene. So then I quit my advertising job without really knowing what I wanted to do. That was in 2010. Wine happened very accidentally in 2012, when my mom read about WSET in the Education Times. There was an article about offbeat careers, and in that there was this career for wine. And so she mentioned it to me, saying that, hey, like this seems something that's different, this seems like something that you might be interested in, so why don't you give it a shot? And my first reaction to her was, what is there to study in wine? Little did I know that once you get into it, you can spend a lifetime studying about wine. She kind of pushed me into it, saying that this looks very interesting. And so what, level one is just for one day. Even if you don't like it, you don't have to continue it, but just do the level one and see how you like it. So very reluctantly, I signed up for level one, and I have never looked back since. So it's just been an amazing journey, just learning about wine, and talking about wine, and getting people to drink wine, taste wine, all of that.
So, do you have like a philosophy, a personal philosophy, or a approach, your personal approach towards your work that sets you apart?
I feel there are a few things. One is, number one, I would say, is my passion for what I do, and my love for what I do. And the other thing is that I am very much about the details. So I'm very thorough and I'm very detail oriented, and I pay attention to the smallest of things. That is to not say that, I'm some hardcore perfectionist. It's not about that, but it's about basically paying attention to all the small aspects that make things flow. When you are doing an event, for example, what are the things that you are looking into every single aspect, and therefore on the day of the event, when your event is happening for those 2-3 hours, everything just flows. Why? Because I have looked into all the singular minutest of things that go into the experience of that event, for me also and for the guest as well. And besides that, I love interacting with people as well. So I love talking to people, and I love meeting them, and I love engaging with them about wine. So I feel like those aspects also, really set me apart. Yeah.
What advice would you give to, a young professional or somebody who wants to get into the industry or become a sommelier? Is there anything you would like to say?
I would really say it's important to study. It's important to get your qualifications. Even if you just do level 2 to start with, for example, right? To get into the industry, then I would say work in the industry, learn how it functions, what happens, what are the various rules that are governing it, how are people functioning, how are people promoting wine, how are people educating other people about wine, how does an importer work, how does a restaurant setup work, how does an Indian winery operate, to learn about these things on the job, right? And then after that, just continue to, like, fuel your education, through learning more and more about wine, and like show up for what needs to be done, whatever your job demands. If whether you're in a job, whether you're a consultant, whether you're a wine entrepreneur, I think it's important to show up, for what needs to be done.
So with that, we'll end our discussion over here. But yeah, I mean, I had a great time actually
So did
talking
I.
to you.
Thank you
This
so
is
much.
so much extremely interesting because so many facts and so much information probably would be like maybe basic for people who are in this industry. For me, but for me, it was like really fun, and I think I would like to actually come, for your events.
Please do.
Absolutely, and I will come as a participant. Absolutely, and yeah, it was fun. Thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
a part of the professional circuit. It is truly a pleasure to have you on the show.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for
Thank
having
you.
me.